Welcome to the Shepherd's Wallet podcast, financial guidance that speaks pastor. I'm Seth Scott, and I help ministry leaders navigate the unique financial complexities that come with answering God's call. Pastors face one of the most complex financial situations of any profession, yet there's a shocking lack of targeted, useful information available to help them. That's what we're here to change. If you've ever felt overwhelmed by housing allowances, confused by SECA taxes, or frustrated that generic financial advice doesn't address your unique ministry situation, you're in exactly the right place.
We all know that clergy taxation is genuinely complex, and there is a chance that your current tax preparer may be making key errors when they file your return. But what if your CPA isn't the problem? What if the entire system set them up to fail with you? Today, I'm looking at clergy taxes from the other side of the desk and giving you practical options for strengthening the accuracy of your taxes that don't necessarily mean finding a new preparer. I spend a lot of time talking about errors that I see with minister taxes, and some of these errors come from taxes that have been prepared by CPAs. And I don't want to give the impression that I think CPAs are incompetent. I'm going to just start off right off the bat. I want to be fair to the CPAs in this episode and kind of give you a glimpse as to why it's so easy for minister taxes to fall through the cracks when it comes to the gaps in their knowledge, and about how much is required of them to proactively know and to know what to ask in order to do a minister's taxes properly. Now, I want to start off by saying I am not a CPA. All right. So someone who has a CPA at the end of their name, they have achieved something that I have not personally achieved. I have every respect for CPAs. I know the rigorous steps they have to take in order to go through the training, to take the tests, hours of on-the-job training in order to get to where they are. Mass respect for CPAs. So CPAs who get clergy taxes wrong aren't incompetent. They're smart, they're trained, they're professionals. They're just operating in a system that never prepared them explicitly for you. Let's think about what a CPA's training looks like. They have rigorous education on the tax code. They have continuing education requirements, so they have to keep up with changes and keep their skills sharp and their knowledge sharp. They have access to professional databases, IRS guidelines. They have peer networks. So when they hit a complex situation, like say a complex business situation, a lot of their clients are business owners, have a lot of complex issues with how do we maximize taxes for this and how do we do that. That's a CPA's bread and butter, and they have the resources at their fingertips to figure it out and to collaborate with other professionals and to get the answers that they need, because those answers are out there for them. When it comes to ministers, though, minister taxation kind of exists in a parallel universe to all of that from what I've seen. The rules are completely different. They're counterintuitive compared to everything else that a CPA typically works with. The resources are niche. The client base is tiny. A CPA might see one or two pastors in their entire career, and they may not have ever been told how legitimately different minister taxation is. So again, I got to stress it. Your CPA, if they're making errors on your taxes, and I'll go over how to figure out if they are in a minute, but that doesn't mean that they're lazy or careless or they're bad professionals. They're just playing a game where you showed up with a completely different rule book from everybody else and nobody told them about it. I've made this analogy before that when it comes to financial planning and taxes, it's like pastors, it's like everybody else is playing football, but pastors are playing basketball. It's not necessarily a harder game. It's just a game with different rules. And if you don't know that the rules are different, you're going to be really confused when it comes time to play the game. So that goes for pastors and for CPAs alike. So let's sit in the CPA's chair for a minute and look at your tax situation from their perspective. These are the kinds of questions that a CPA would have to know proactively to ask you in order to do your return correctly. Now, these aren't obscure edge cases, at least when it comes to pastors. These are fundamental questions that determine whether your return as a minister is correct. Here's the first question. Have you opted out of Social Security? Whether you've opted out or not changes everything about how your Schedule SE should look. This is the schedule that determines your self-employment income. If they don't ask this question, then they may assume that you're in the system and they're going to calculate self-employment tax that you don't owe. Maybe they know enough to know that pastors are considered self-employed, and so they would just put them through like every other self-employed individual. It's like, oh yeah, it's just like have someone having a sole proprietorship or something like that. I'll fill out the Schedule SC and it'll be fine. Well, if they don't know that pastors have this unique ability to opt out of Social Security via Form 4361, which is a form that a lot of CPAs probably have never seen before or heard of, it's a niche situation. And you might end up overpaying on your self-employment taxes when you don't have to. A second question they should be proactively asking: do you have documentation of your housing allowance designation? Now, this is different from asking, do you receive a housing allowance from your church? Because the documentation requirements are crystal clear. You need to have it in writing. It needs to be ahead of time by your church. And are they asking you about the three-part test? This is another thing that they need to know about. Your actual housing allowance exclusion is the lesser of your designation from your church, your actual housing expenses, or the fair rental value. I guarantee you, I'm a financial professional, so I need to be worried. I need to be concerned about the word guarantee, but I'm like 99% sure that there's not a CPA resource out there that's mainstream that's telling CPAs how to calculate a fair rental value of your home. I If that exists, if any of you know of a resource like that, please send it to me. It will make my day. I would be simultaneously very happy and very surprised. So that's just not something that they teach CPAs. I'm pretty firm on that. So if your CPA doesn't know how to ask about this, doesn't know to ask about the official designation, and doesn't know about the three-part test, they're not going to be able to calculate your exclusion correctly because they need all three pieces of that three-part test. And they certainly won't know that the burden of proof is on you if the IRS starts asking questions about these sorts of things. Third question, again, about the housing allowance: do you have records of your housing expenses? And do you know which one counts? Here's a fun one. Housekeeping services, do those count towards your housing allowance? The answer happens to be no. They do not qualify as a housing expense for housing allowance purposes. Neither does food, even though you eat it in your house. What about lawn care? Yeah, that counts. House cleaning? No. But good luck finding these kind of distinctions in any mainstream tax resource. These things are buried in IRS rulings. And look, I've mentioned Richard Hammer before. He puts out the Clergy tax guide every year. This guy's the GOAT, right? He's doing the Lord's work. Every year he's putting out his comprehensive guide on churches and pastors, what the rules are for them specifically. It's a very comprehensive resource and it's fantastic. It's also 600 pages long. And if a CPA has one minister client, are they going to know to go buy this 600-page guide and comb through it and proactively try to find these issues that they don't know that they have? The answer is probably not. So if your CPA doesn't know to ask these questions and they don't know the nuances, they're probably guessing, honestly. Another question: did your church do your W-2 correctly? Now, a CPA's job is normally not to audit the payroll of the employers of the clients that bring them their documents. Right? CPAs normally just take the W-2s at face value, and unless there are like really obvious errors where, like numbers don't add up or something like that, a CPA is not going to think twice about just putting in the information that's on the W-2. But again, churches make payroll errors all the time because a minister's W-2 should look genuinely different from everybody else. Do they know the difference? Do they know proactively to look to see if your church is doing it correctly? Even if they did, a CPA can't fix that. You have to go back to the church and get a correction. But again, the CPA has to know that in order to prompt you to go back to your church and get a correction if the W-2 doesn't look like it's supposed to look for pastors. Here's a real easy way to look for it. I've gone over this before, but real fast. If you look at your W-2, you have boxes that are numbered. Box 1 should be your wages minus your housing allowance. So housing allowance should not be included in there, and minus your 403B contributions. Your 403B contributions shouldn't be in there as well. Again, so for most people, the CPA is going to get the W-2 and they're going to look at box 1 and say, okay, this is what the guy made. They might even look at box 3 that shows the Social Security wages and say, okay, this is what they really made minus all of their retirement contributions. But it's completely different for a minister. If you were to compare your pay stubs to what shows up in box 1, for everybody else, there's going to be some parity there. For ministers that are getting a housing allowance, it's going to be completely different, and it should be different, and that's a good thing. So box 1 should have only your wages, minus your housing allowance, minus your 403B contributions. Boxes 3 through 6, these are your FICA withholdings. They should be blank. Pastors don't pay FICA taxes, even though churches everywhere are treating their ministers like normal employees and are withholding FICA tax for them. Ministers are self-employed. They don't pay Social Security or Medicare taxes, or at least the church doesn't pay it on their behalf. You as a minister are on the hook to pay it all yourself. And box 14, housing allowance, if you get one, should be there for documentation purposes. Most CPAs have never seen a correct clergy W-2. They don't know what to look for. They don't know what's different. And if the church got it wrong upstream, even a competent CPA can't fix it. Like I said before, they have to know, hey, your church needs to fix this for me to go forward. But in order for them to prompt you on that, they need to know what the right kind of W-2 has to look like for a pastor. And again, good luck finding that in mainstream CPA training resources. And here's another question, finally. Do you have any 1099 income from ministry activities? These are like wedding fees, funeral honoraria, speaking engagements. These have different implications based off whether you opted out or not. Most people, when they bring their 1099s for their self-employed activities like that, it goes right to the Schedule SE. The self-employment tax is calculated. Bada bing, bada boom. It's all the same. But again, CPA has to know, have you opted out of Social Security? If so, your 1099 that you get from your church is treated differently from the 1099 that you get from your side job doing Uber, right? And CPA has to know the difference. So here's the uncomfortable reality. A CPA would need to ask questions they don't know exist, look for documents they've never seen, and apply rules that contradict their training. That's not a knowledge gap. That's a chasm. That's like a canyon gap in knowledge between what rank and file CPAs are trained to do, and they're excellent at their job, again. But the gap between that and what they actually need to proactively know and have front of mind when they do your taxes in particular, that's a really, really, really wide gap. So, how do you know if your tax preparer is in over their head? How do you know? I mean, most pastors are just giving their stuff to their tax preparer and assuming that they have it covered. And, are you able to look at your tax return when it's done and audit it and see that it's correct? Probably not, unless you listen to this podcast and then you have some practical guidance. But, I mean, sometimes it's obvious that they don't know what they're doing. I mean, if they just kind of cavalier about it, just like, oh, I'll figure it out. Or if they seem confused when you mention the housing allowance, that's like run, like run right now. But sometimes the signs are more subtle that maybe they don't know what they're doing. Here are signs from your actual returns. First thing to look for is your Schedule SE. Again, this is your self-employment part of your tax return. It shows SECA tax, but you've opted out, right? Or vice versa. If you haven't opted out and there's no SECA tax here, if your SECA tax is not calculated on your housing allowance and it's only calculated on your wages, that's a common issue as well. If your housing allowance appears anywhere on your 1040 or on any of the schedules, it shouldn't. It's a ghost number. Your housing allowance doesn't show up anywhere except for box 14 of your W-2. You have no Schedule SE at all when you should have one. If your W-2 box 1 matches your total compensation, even if you have a housing allowance. If you have business expenses on Schedule C when you only have W-2 income, that's a red flag as well. There are some harder signs to look for as well. If your tax preparer has never initiated a conversation about quarterly estimated tax payments. If you have not opted out of Social Security, you're not going to be able to rely on your church's withholding, like say with a W-4. Like a lot of employers, they'll fill out a W-4 to tell their employer, how many dependents they have, yada, yada, so that they know how much to withhold for them. There's two reasons why this doesn't really work for pastors, especially if they have not opted out. First of all, your wages are artificially dampened because of your housing allowance. It's a zero-sum game, right? So your withholdings are only calculated based on the wages portion of your compensation, not on the housing allowance. And secondly, your tax burden is not based off of income tax as much as it is based off of your self-employment tax. For the plurality of pastors out there, you're paying way more in self-employment tax than you are in income tax, and they're not withholding for that. Again, boxes 3 through 6 are blank. That's where your employer would normally withhold your Social Security and Medicare taxes for you. Not only are they not able to withhold that for you, but you're on the hook for double what everybody else pays. So there's a huge gap between what your church is probably withholding for you and what you actually owe. And the way to get on top of that is to have a rhythm of paying estimated quarterly payments throughout the year. Your CPA should be prompting you on this. Year-end tax planning has never come up. That's another red flag that maybe they don't understand working with clergy. They've never asked about your church's retirement plan type, 403B versus 401k. There's a big difference for pastors. And you'll know about it if you go back and listen to previous episodes. We talk about this a lot. Bottom line is this: if you feel like you're educating them rather than the other way around, that's not the dynamic that should be. They should be educating you. They should be in your corner. They should be the professional in the room. And unfortunately, the dynamic is usually the pastor is the one who knows more about these things and is left having to remind their tax preparer about X, Y, and Z. So if you've ever left a meeting with your tax preparer thinking, I'm not sure they understand my situation, I would trust that instinct. You're probably right about that. Okay, so what do you do if you suspect that your CPA perhaps isn't fully equipped to handle your situation? What do you do then? There's a spectrum of responses, and the right one depends on your situation, and it depends on the importance of your relationship with your current tax preparer. The first and easiest path is probably to share this episode. Maybe they just need a wake up call to understand, hey, there are questions that you need to research a little bit more deeply, things you need to be a little bit more proactive on. Most CPAs are natural learners. They want to serve their clients well. Sending them this episode says, I've learned that my tax situation is more complex than we realized. I'd love for us to figure it out together. It's not confrontational. It opens a door to collaboration. And if they're receptive, that tells you something good about the relationship. Something else you can do is you can share my free interview guide. I put together a free interview guide that you can use with either prospective tax preparers that you're vetting, or with your current tax preparer to see if they really know what they're talking about. It has 16 questions that can apply to your situation, with green flag and red flag responses. Now, you can go through this questionnaire with your tax preparer, or you can just give them the questionnaire, because those green flag responses are an excellent prompt to show them what they should be saying and what they should know. And if they look at those green flag responses and they're either confused or they're like, I didn't think of it that way, that could be a great resource for them. When your CPA sees, the correct answer to this question should be X, they'll know what to look for, and then that gives them kind of the prompting to know where to go looking for resources. So this isn't a gotcha to say it's like, hey, you big dummy, you've been messing with my tax returns. This is a resource for them, and CPAs love resources. You can get it for free on the website, shepherdswallet.com/tax interview guide with dashes, or the easier one is just go up to the resources tab and look for the tax interview guide. You can download it for free. You can share it with them. Another thing you can do is you can have them reach out to me. If you have a CPA you trust and you want to keep, maybe they're a family friend, maybe they're a church board member, maybe they've served you in other areas as well, and you want to honor and continue that relationship, I would love nothing more than to talk with them directly. I do peer-to-peer consultations with tax professionals and financial advisors all the time. I'm happy to walk them through the clergy-specific framework, point them to the right resources, help them understand what makes your situation different. A 30-minute conversation is usually all that it takes, and it's a conversation in their language, professional to professional. Just have them reach out to me. You can email me at seth@shepherdswallet.com. You can go to my website and go to the contact tab and send me a note that way. I would genuinely love to help as many CPAs and tax preparers out there as I possibly can to know more about how to do clergy taxation, right? A rising tide raises all ships, right? I am not gunning for anybody's business here. I just want pastors to be served. That is my passion. And so I want you to be served well. And so I want your tax professional to be in your corner and to know the questions to ask. And I am happy to help them do that. The final path is just knowing that it's time to move on. Sometimes the relationship isn't salvageable. Like if you start bringing this stuff up and they get defensive, or if they dismiss your concerns, if they have this insistence that they're right despite evidence that, they're not really right. Maybe you've tried the first three paths and nothing has changed. At this point, I feel like good stewardship requires you to find someone better equipped to handle your situation. You can feel welcome to use the interview guide to vet new candidates. You can also learn to file your taxes yourself. If your taxes are pretty straightforward, at least from a clergy perspective, I also do tax mastery training. I will train you hands-on on how to use TurboTax or Tax Slayer. Tax Slayer tends to be cheaper, and actually I found it to be more user-friendly when it comes to prompting pastors about their particular situations compared to TurboTax, but I do both. I'm happy to walk you through how to file your own taxes. We record that video. You can keep that video for future years and refer back to it. Hopefully that's a resource that serves you for years to come. If you're more of a DIY person and you want to do it yourself, that's absolutely something that you can do, and I'm here to help you do it with the tax mastery training. Again, go to the website, go to services, and then tax services or tax help. It'll be under there. So I'd rather help you save a good relationship with a willing CPA than see you start over from scratch. But I'd also rather see you start over from scratch than watch you overpay taxes for another decade. This is about stewardship. It's your money and your relationship. All right, so quick pause here. I've mentioned the Tax Professional Interview Guide a couple times. If you haven't grabbed it yet, it's completely free. shepherdswallet.com/tax interview guide with dashes in between, or just go to the website, go to the resources section and look for the tax interview guide. 16 questions, green and red flag responses, a scoring rubric, a checklist of what to bring to any meeting with a tax preparer. Use it to vet somebody new that you're considering, or share it with your current CPA as a learning tool. Again, it's shepherdswallet.com. Go to the resources tab and look for the tax interview guide, completely free. And if you want me to talk directly with your tax professional, have them reach out. Again, email me, seth@shepherdswallet.com. You can reach out through the website, through the contact form. I genuinely enjoy these conversations. I love helping a CPA understand clergy taxations, and in most situations, they love it as well. Again, CPAs are smart folks. They love learning. They love having tools in their toolbox to help them serve their clients better. All right, let's wrap this up. So this matters beyond just getting your taxes right. I mean, every dollar you overpay or every dollar that you incur in penalties and fees for underpaying is a dollar that's not supporting your family, it's not funding ministry, and it's not building retirement security, which you should definitely have. Every year of compounding errors makes this hole deeper. But also, your relationship with your CPA matters too. Many of you have worked with the same person for years. There's trust, there's history there. I don't want to blow that up unnecessarily, but what I do want to do is for you to approach the situation with your eyes open. Now, just understand you're not asking for special treatment from your CPA. You're asking for accurate treatment. The tax code created your complexity, right? This is placed not by your hand, but in your lap. You didn't choose this. When you signed up for ministry, I'm sure you weren't looking forward to being thrown headfirst into the world of self-employment. Advocating for yourself isn't being difficult, it's being a good steward. Now, we're getting to the middle of December here. Tax season is coming in a few weeks. You have that time to evaluate your situation and make changes if needed. Whether that means sharing this episode with your current tax preparer, downloading the guide, having your CPA call me, finding somebody new, whatever it is, take action now while there's still time. Don't wait until we get to April 14th before you start moving on some of this stuff. Don't let another year of uncertainty pass when clarity is available. Your CPA might be great at what they do. They probably are. They just might not know what they don't know about you. Your job is to help them figure that out or find somebody who already has.
Thank you for joining me on the Shepherd's Wallet podcast. I hope these strategies help you steward your sacred capital with greater confidence and peace. If you found this helpful and would like to go deeper in your stewardship journey, join the Shepherd's Wallet community at shepherdswallet.com/join. You'll get weekly live Q&A sessions, pastor-specific financial tools, and a community of fellow ministry leaders committed to faithful stewardship together. Also, you can pre-order my upcoming book, Shepherding Your Finances. It's the comprehensive guide to everything we talk about on this show, plus implementation worksheets and strategies you won't find anywhere else. Pre-orders are 35% off for a limited time at shepherdingyourfinances.com. Thanks for listening, and remember, you are worthy of double honor, including the honor of proper financial guidance. See you next week.